Hello and welcome, it's Deborah from Attic Lane, and today I'm going to show you what I made using the latest Simon Says stamp kit. So let's open the box and see what we have inside. This is the Brushstrokes messages kit. Let's see what we have. So there is an inspiration sheet, nice use of a die that we have in here. There is a multi-medium mat, a little stick to apply the medium mat with, and a small die. There is an emboss it pen from Ranger, clear. I'll put that one to one side. There is embossing powder in ultrafine steel navy. This is by Simon Says Stamp. There are two envelopes. I haven't seen those in a kit so far. There is some paper. Let me show you the cardstock first. I'm going to put that one to one side. There is blue, grey, cream, and then this sort of rose gold, which is lovely. It's got a really nice shimmer to it. And these are beautiful colours, just lovely. So there are 4 sheets of those. This is a 6x6 paper pad, and I'll just flip through so you can see some lovely rose gold embossing on there, that glimmer that we saw in that sheet of paper. I think there's going to be loads of ways to use these papers. These are beautiful. Very nice. And finally, there is Simon Says Stamp. This one is called Brushstroke Messages. And you can see there's all kinds of strokes and splats, and that could be a V or it could be the top half of a cross. There are some messages. Thank you, you are loved, happy birthday, just wanted to say you're amazing, you're going to rock this, you got this. And I can see already that these square shaped sentiments will fit nicely into this rectangle, and perhaps some of these longer ones will fit into these here. So we're going to have a little play and see what we can make with these. For our first card, I wanted to make maximum use of the dies and also the medium mat. So I've die cut a lot of the little flowers out, and I've separated the internal bit, which would make a lovely flower on its own, from the outside. And I'm going to use my craft mat because this can get a little bit messy, and I'm going to put the multi-medium on my mat, and then I'm going to brush it onto some white card. This will then prime the card ready to take the adhesion of the little die cutouts, and I can use the same matte medium to attach the die cuts as well to the card. When they're all stuck on, I'll leave the card to dry and then I'll paint it. And you can see the effect is as if that card has been embossed. I've got some grey paint which is very similar in grey colour to one of the base cards, and I'm going to use that to paint all over my white card. Once that's dry, I'm going to go over the top of that with some water-based wax. This is from Imagination Crafts, and this one is called Copper. And you can see I try a little on the back of my hand just to make sure I'm not going to put on too much. I just want to rub it very, very softly just to catch the shape of those leaves or petals. I always get my leaves and petals muddled up. You can see it gives a really nice shimmer. It makes the flowers stand out a little bit more, and if you go over the design with a cloth, you can buff them to a nice shine. So now I'm going to stick this onto a piece of blue base card, and I'm going to prepare the sentiment. So I've chosen one of the sentiments from the stamp set, and I'm going to ink it up with clear ink, and I'm going to use white embossing powder. And I will heat set that, and then I'll cut it out ready to add to my card. I'm just adding a little cutter's detail at the end there. And I've put some foam backing on the back of my sentiment and I'm going to glue it in place. I've taken one of the flowers and I've cut it out, and you can also see that at this point I've decided I want to shorten that sentiment to give my flower a little bit more space at the end, and I'm gluing that in place, and I'm using the matte medium as well. I've cut out a few more elements from one of the sheets, some leaves, and I'm going to add Imagination Crafts Just Pearls, and this colour is copper. That gives a lovely finish to those flowers. For card 2, I've selected one of the sheets of paper and I'm going to cut out some of the elements from it. If anything was difficult about this kit, it was deciding which of the papers to use. That's the problem with them being double-sided, is that if you use one on one side, you might be losing a really beautiful page on the other side as well. And this actually illustrates that point, because I have got enough on the reverse of that sheet of paper to cut out some of those pink stripes, and I want to use those on my card. I've chosen one of the sentiments and I'm going to use Versamark ink to stamp it up just on the edge of one of my pink strips, and then I'm going to use the blue embossing powder that came as part of the kit to cover that over, and then I will heat set that. The embossing powder is a very fine powder and it's got a slight shimmer in it. It's not silver, I haven't quite worked it out, it's almost, and it's not a glitter, but it's got a really lovely, rich, deep colour. I've attached my sentiment to my card, and now I'm going to add a vertical strip. The strips will anchor the design onto the card, and they also provide a structure from which I can fan out a selection of flowers and leaves that I've cut out from one of the sheets of paper. I'll glue everything into position to complete my design, and I'll complete the card with some embellishments from Imagination Crafts. These are called Just Pearls and the colour is copper, and I'm going to dot those all over my card to give it a little bit of extra zing. These drops dry with a perfect shaped dome and a nice little bit of extra glimmer and glitz. I'm using a grey card base from my stash for card 3, and you can see I'm having that dilemma, which side of the paper will I use, because they could both have served the same purpose equally well. I decided that I was going to take 2 of the stamps and I was going to put them on top of each other so that I have a long phrase saying. It'll fit nicely with my style of card. I'm going to heat emboss the blue embossing powder, and then you'll see the phrase complete. I've stamped it onto that rose metal card that was part of the kit, and I'm going to now glue this onto a piece of grey card because I want to cut a frame around the outside of it. This is going to be a very, very plain card where the message is what's important. Eventually I decided that I would go with the spots uppermost, so I'm sticking the spots onto my grey base card, and I've added some foam tape to my main sentiment on the top, and I'm just adding that to the card to complete it. The little die that came as part of the kit is very versatile, and for card 4 I'm going to use it to create a shaker card. I've cut out 3 of the die shapes into the piece of rose gold card, and I'm now going to mat it onto grey card. But I want the mat to be visible around the outside. I don't want it to intrude on the inside of the space where the die cuts are. So I've cut out a grey frame, and I'm now going to use my matte medium to go around the outside edge and then stick the rose gold card into position. I've cut a piece of acetate and I'm going to glue that in place on the reverse of the card. Now I'm using foam tape to go around the outside edge so that it raises up the card and gives it some dimension. And I'm going to use a grey card again from my own stash so that I don't go through too much of the card from my kit. I've chosen to use the pink heart paper on the grey background because that matches beautifully the rose gold paper. And now I'm going to position some little sequins in 3 spaces on my card. When I position the card over the top of those sequins, they fit in place really beautifully. So that part of my card is complete, and now I'm choosing a sentiment from the stamp set, and I'm inking it up using Versacolour ink, and I'm going to use white embossing powder, and then I will heat set that and cut it to shape, and then I will stick it onto the front of my card, and then my card is complete. Card 5, I wanted to use 2 of the papers from the pack to create my own paper. So I've selected the 2 pieces that I want to go together, and I'm going to glue one on top of the other. What I want is a central panel. I've taken the grey card that came as part of the kit, and I've cut it in half to create a top folding card, and now I'm going around the card with a pencil to make sure that I can identify exactly which bit of this new paper I'm going to use. The reason that I wanted that top cream section is because I want to emphasise the hearts. So I've used the Versamark ink and the heart stamp that came as part of the kit to ink up 3 hearts, and I'm using the blue embossing powder, which I've heat set, to add 3 little hearts in a row, in a vertical row, onto the front of that card. And now I'm gluing that into position on my grey base card. I've got a piece of cream card, and I'm going to use that as the basis for one of the brush strokes, and I've used smoky grey VersaFine ink. Once that ink is dry, I can add my sentiment, and I can add my blue embossing powder and heat set it. I've cut it out, and now I've added a piece of foam tape to the back, and I'll put it into position on my card. For card 6, I've identified a really beautiful rose gold strip from one of the sheets of paper that I want to use as a background for my sentiment. So I'm inking up my sentiment and putting it into position on the rose gold of the paper, and I will use the blue embossing powder, and I'll heat set this ready to use on my card. So I've embossed Happy Birthday on my strip of paper, and now I'm going to cut it down to a size that's appropriate for the card that I want to use it on. The papers in the kit were so lovely that I really wanted to exploit them, and I wanted to get as many on one card as I could. So I've cut strips of paper, glued them onto a grey base card, and added some of the die cut flowers around the outside edges. For card 7, I'm going to use the long tall sentiment that I created by putting 2 of the stamps on top of each other. I want this to be a tag card. So I've identified a little spot under my sentiment, measured it halfway, and now I'm going to create a sort of a fishtail on the bottom of that tag. And once I've cut it out, I'll use that as a template for the card that will back the tag. They're both cut, so now I can glue the top piece onto the bottom piece. When you run those 2 stamp sets together, you get a really nice phrase. It says, "Just wanted to say you're amazing. You're going to rock this." And I think that's a really encouraging message to send somebody on a card. I'm going to take some twine, and I'm going to wrap it around the top of my tag, and then I'm going to tie a little bow. I'm not very good at doing bows. Don't look. Once it's done, I'm going to add some foam pads to the back, and then I can stick it directly onto my card right at the very top. And that's my card finished. Very simple, but I think that's a really effective card. I think it's one of my favourites. For card 8, I'm going to use Cottage Cuts circle die, and I'm going to cut a shape from 2 pieces of card at the same time. So I'm gluing this sheet onto my grey base card, and this is a sheet of pink that fades from a dark pink at the bottom to a soft pink at the top. When I remove my die cut, you can see I have a nice circle. And now I'm going to use the next size up circle, and I'm going to cut a piece of acetate. That will fit just over the aperture, and I'm using that blue card to create another border the same size as the acetate, so that means I can glue the acetate in place and it won't be seen. Onto the front of the acetate, I've used Versamarking to stamp 4 hearts. I've used the blue embossing powder to cover them, and I'm going to wipe away the excess with the end of a very small paintbrush. I've found that you can heat emboss on acetate if you're very careful. I've moved this onto a brown drawing board to protect my mat underneath, and I'm making sure that my gun is really hot to begin with, and then I'm giving the design bursts of heat, and that way I can melt the embossing powder without melting the acetate. Then I can use the matte medium and the little brush that came as part of the kit to dab little dots of glue all the way around that circle. Not too much, because then the glue won't soak out when I put the acetate in place, and I'm going to weight it down with a block that you would normally use to ink up and stamp a stamp with, because that way I can get even pressure onto the card and make sure it sticks nicely. I've protected the inside of my card with a little piece of waste white card, and I've got my blue border ready, and I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm going to use little spots of matte medium to go around the outside of that border and then position it over the circle. And again, I'll use the block and something very heavy to give it time to set. And when the glue is dry, you can see you have a really nice aperture card. Card 9 is another way for me to use some more of the really lovely papers and give them an outing. So I've cut some strips, all the same width. This was 2 centimeters, and I've given each strip a little fishtail. And you can see once I've got a template on one, I use that as a template to mark out the shape I want to cut on all the other strips as well. And I've got one of my rose gold strips in there as well. So I'm cutting all of those pieces out ready to use on my project, and then I'm also going to use my mat. Now these mats are really helpful because they've got some dimensions drawn on them. This particular mat has got centimetres on one side when I'm feeling European and inches on the other side for when I'm feeling a bit more imperial. All of these little tags then have been cut to the same length. I'm taking the rose gold coloured tag, and that's going to be the centrepiece of my card, and I'm going to blue heat emboss a heart onto that piece of card. To assemble the card, I'm taking all my little tags, I'm putting the heart at the centre, and then I'm just working out the positions of the rest of them. I'm going to put my sentiment in position, and I'm going to heat emboss this, and then I know I've got that in the right position, and I can make the swag behind it, the swag of tags, I can make sure that they go in exactly the right place. There was an Emboss It pen included in the kit, which I haven't made very much use of, but in this card I'm using it just to randomly dot all over the card, the background of the card, before I fix my tags in position. I'm going to put the blue embossing powder over the top of all of those, and then I'll heat set them, and that just gives the card a little bit of extra interest. I have a piece of white twine, and I've put foam backing on each of the tags so that I can position them directly onto my mat, and they will hold the twine in position. So the first one in the centre will hold the twine in place and allow me to position everything else and capture the twine in the right place as well. And then off camera, because I'm sneaky that way, I've done 2 little bows. I'm holding them in position with the matte medium, and I will adhere them just to the end of the swag. And that's my card complete. Nice and simple, and a great way to show off any special papers you might have. For my final card, card 10, I'm going to use 2 of the long brushstroke stamps and 3 Versacolor inks, Cement, Seashell and Polar Blue. I'm taking the widest of the brushstroke stamps and I'm inking it up with Seashell, and I'm going to stamp onto this card horizontally 4 times. Once I've completed my 4 impressions, I'm going to turn the card around. I'm going to keep using the same stamp, but this time I'm going to ink up using the cement ink pad. Now I'm switching to the thinner brushstroke stamp, and I'm inking that up again, and I'm going to just go under each of those grey lines with the polar blue. This is going to give me a really nice, interesting effect on my card, and you could do this with all kinds of different colours. You could do this with Christmas colours, reds and greens, maybe gold in there, and that would give you a beautiful background on your cards. So now I'm taking the largest of the block stamps and I'm inking it up with the polar blue, and I'm going to stamp it onto a piece of white card that I've already cut that is slightly larger than the stamp itself. Now I'm going to mat and layer this onto blue and also onto my rose gold card, and using the rose gold card and my die I've cut out a flower which I'm going to pop out of the die cut, and I'll stick it onto the front of my card. Incidentally, the piece that's left from the middle that I've put at the top right of the card there for you to have a little look at would make a fantastic embellishment on its own, or if you wanted to make a cluster of flowers. I'm using the outside of the die cut to just stick onto the top of my little topper that I've made for my card, and I'm going to add the sentiment to this card as well. So I'm inking it up using Versacolor ink, and I'm going to use the blue embossing powder, and I'll heat set this before I add my topper to the card. I've added adhesive foam to my topper to stick it to my card and give it some dimension, and now I'm going to complete the card with a central dot from the Imagination Crafts Copper Just Pearls. Now I'm going to say thank you very much for watching as always. I really appreciate your comments. I'm going to leave you with some close-ups of all of the cards that we've made today, along with some music.